Hi, I'm Karen, and today we're going to read another classic called The Little Match Girl. This is by Hans Christian Andersen, and Jerry Pickney also contributed to this book itself. There's some beautiful illustrations, and it's a bit of a sad story, so just get prepared. But it's a classic. It's a wonderful story. So let's get started. The Little Match Girl. It was cold in the small, cramped attic of the tenement where a family of 5 children was at work making artificial flowers. The wind whistled through the room, try as they might to stuff the biggest cracks with rags and straw. One of the children, who had an especially graceful way about her, was sent out to sell flowers and matches in the city. It was late in the wintry afternoon of New Year's Eve as the poor little girl walked along the icy streets. This shows her setting out to sell her matches and flowers. Okay. Here she is in the city. Okay. She had had slippers on when she left home, but they were not much good, for they were so huge. They had last been worn by her mother, and they fell off the little girl's feet when she was running across the avenue to avoid an automobile and a carriage that had nearly collided. You see her shoe left there by the wheel. Okay. What she does after her shoe falls off. Oh, look at this big city scene. Lots of people, and there she is. So the poor little girl went on with nothing but torn stockings on her numb feet. She carried a quantity of matches in a tray and the flowers in a basket. As she trudged along, she marveled at the many wonderful things for sale, things that the little girl could never have imagined. And there was a most delicious odor of roast goose in the streets, for it was New Year's Eve. She could never forget that. Looks like everyone's getting ready for a feast or something for New Year's Eve. Let's see if she has any luck. Well, there's all the people. And there's the little match girl. Nobody had bought anything from her as the afternoon turned into evening. Nobody had even given her a coin. The child was hungry and trembling from the bitter cold, and she looked the picture of misery. Poor thing. The little girl longed to go home, but she could not, as she had not sold any of her matches or her flowers. Her father would beat her, and besides, it was almost as cold at home as it was here. She walked on until she found a corner that seemed to offer protection from the wind, but she was colder than ever. Here she is in the cold. Her little hands and feet were almost stiff with cold. She thought perhaps a match would do some good, but did she dare take one from the tray and strike it on the wall to warm her fingers? She pulled one out, and with a rish, it blazed into life. It burned with a bright, clear flame, just like a little candle when she held her hand around it. It gave off a very strange light, too. What does she see in the strange light? It seemed to the little girl that she was sitting in front of a big stove with polished brass feet and handles. There was a splendid fire blazing in it, and warming her so beautifully. But just as she was stretching her feet to warm them, the blaze went out, the stove vanished, and she was left sitting with the end of the burned-out match in her hand. She struck a new one. It burned, it blazed up, and where the light fell, the wall became transparent, and she saw a marvelous feast spread out before her. The table was spread with a white cloth and pretty china. A roast goose, stuffed with apples and chestnuts, was steaming on it. There was another table filled with cookies and desserts of all kinds. The little girl's mouth watered as she gazed at the delicacies. The match went out, and there was nothing to be seen but the bare brick wall. Again, she lit another. This time she was sitting next to a lovely Christmas tree, surrounded by beautiful clothes and toys, all the things she had seen only in shop windows. Thousands of lighted candles gleamed on the tree's branches. The little girl stretched out both her hands toward them, and then out went the match. The Christmas candles rose higher and higher till she saw that they were only the twinkling stars. There's her tree she saw. One of the stars fell and made a bright streak of light across the sky. Someone is dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only person who had ever been kind to her, used to say, "When a star falls, a soul is going up to God." Now she struck another match against the wall, and this time it was her grandmother who appeared in the circle of flame. She saw her quite clearly and distinctly, looking so gentle and loving. Still, she lit another, and this time she was with her grandmother, just as they had been so many times before. How real it all seemed to be. She's so cold still. "Grandmother," cried the lonely child, "oh, do take me with you. I know you will vanish when the match goes out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the delicious goose, and the beautiful Christmas tree." She hastily struck a whole bunch of matches, because she did so long to keep her grandmother with her. The light of the matches made it as bright as day. Grandmother had never before looked so big or so beautiful. She lifted the little girl into her arms, and they soared in a halo of light and joy, far, far above the earth, where there was no more cold, no hunger, no pain, for they were with God. In the cold morning light, the poor little girl sat there in the corner with a smile on her face, dead, frozen to death on the last night of the old year. When the people of the city finally arose on New Year's Day, they discovered the little body still sitting with the ends of the burned-out matches in her hand. The flowers had been scattered in the frigid night wind across the sidewalk and into the street. She must have tried to warm herself, some said. But no one imagined what beautiful vision she had seen, nor into what glory she had entered with her grandmother in the new year. You see the two shooting stars or falling stars? There they go. The end. Thank you for watching. I recorded this in celebration of having over 1,000 views all over the world, and I really appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoy the books.